We've been down this road before. It's happened to us seemingly every single year. And yet, we continue to go down this path. I wanted to take a minute and say I took the night following the loss to the Toronto Blue Jays to give myself time to compose myself, time to compose my notes, and not just run off the cuff, even though I probably could have done the same show immediately after the game was done. But I wanted to give myself that time because I think that it's important that we don't continue to repeat the same patterns. And sadly, leading into this, I went back and watched the postmortems from the last several years, and it's a lot of the same commentary, a lot of the same notes. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And yet, that's exactly what the New York Yankees continue to do. This, sadly, is the 2025 New York Yankees postmortem. Let's get into it. So, as I said in the open, this is a video that I feel like I've made every single year for the past decade and a half. But more so, and almost seemingly in the tenure of Aaron Boone as Yankee manager, every single year, it seems to be the same exact narrative. The same exact issues plague each and every single team. And yes, Aaron Boone is going to be mostly the fall guy because of the fact that he's the front man for it, right? He's the face of it because of the fact that he's the guy that's doing the post game and the pre-game press conferences for the New York Yankees. He's the guy that's being attached to the lineup creation and the players who are playing and the absolutely ridiculous moves made because the numbers dictate, and yet other moves not being made. So there's a lot of fingers to blame. There's a lot of blame to go around, and it doesn't just stop at Aaron Boone. It goes further up the food chain, and it goes below him as well. And in this video, in this breakdown, in this postmortem catharsis episode, therapy episode of breaking down the 2025 New York Yankees season, there's going to be a lot of blame to go around, and nobody's going to be spared. So let's break down what happened most recently. In the most recent breakdown, in the most recent set of games, the Yankees found themselves facing a superior opponent. And what makes it so interesting to me about the fact that the Blue Jays proved themselves so superior, it wasn't in any one simple fact. But when you look at how this season broke down, it actually really makes me laugh, because the New York Yankees and the Toronto Blue Jays ended with the same exact record. And that's what makes it so interesting. That's what makes it almost so comical that the Yankees are in the position that they are in, going home, while the Blue Jays are advancing on to the ALCS. And why I find it so interesting is when you look at what plagued the Yankees in this series, it's what's plagued them for the last 10 years, arguably even longer. When you look back, and obviously that's all we can do now as a retrospective because the season is over. We can't look forward until the World Series is done and the eventual winner is named. Then you can start looking forward to 2026. But right now starts a long and arduous offseason for Yankee fans, myself included. And looking at what the Blue Jays were in this series compared to what the Yankees were, it was a complete and well-rounded team. And it doesn't pain me as a baseball fan to be able to acknowledge that. The Blue Jays were a superior team to the New York Yankees in this series, and they showed it night in and night out, with the exception of Game 3. In Game 3, ironically enough, the Yankees looked more like the Toronto Blue Jays had all series, and the Blue Jays looked more like the Yankees. And that was the downfall of the New York Yankees. The one game that they won showed them exactly the flaws in their team. In the post game on the Fox breakdown after the final game of the ALDS between the Blue Jays and the Yankees, Derek Jeter said something very revealing. Alex Rodriguez had gone on his tirade about batting average, and everyone saying batting average is overrated and contact is overrated and RBIs are overrated, and that it's all about the home runs. And Jeter said, and it's almost comical, that this team still hasn't been able to figure it out, even though their players of past have known, and the players on the field know exactly what it is. But all of those things, contact, putting the ball in play, not striking out, seem completely overrated until the postseason. That's when those skill sets are so magnified and amplified. And when you think back to just a year ago, the Yankees found themselves in a very similar situation, facing a superior team in the Los Angeles Dodgers. The Yankees beat themselves again in that series as well. They faced a superior team. They had to play perfect baseball and were unable to do so. Here in Game 4, the Yankees had to be perfect in this game because there was no way the Blue Jays were going to face and flip the script twice in a row. There were no way that the Blue Jays were going to go for back-to-back games playing the Yankee style of baseball, striking out too much, trying to hit too many home runs, and not putting the ball in play enough. The one game that the Yankees won in this series should be the benchmark, the staple point of the recreation of this team for 2026. And yet, it won't happen. When we look at this series, there's a lot of blame to be put on the starting pitching that was absolutely flawed in their approach. They got absolutely blistered and battered and beaten by the Blue Jays time after time. Cam Schlittler gave us the best start. Our rookie, and I said it in my postgame following the game, and I'll say it here and reiterate it again. Cam Schlittler gave us a better start than a former Rookie of the Year winner, two current All-Stars who were combined to make $42 million this year. And it was our rookie that gave us the best start. 6 1/3 innings of work, I believe it was, in the final tally for Cam Schlittler. And had it not been for the error, and yes, you can't assume the double play as it stated, but that was a very routine-esque play that Jazz Chisholm should have made to get the Yankees out of that inning. It would have remained a 2-1 game, and the Yankees could have gotten through 7 innings with their starter for the first time in the series. You're not going to be able to beat a team like the Blue Jays, who are very contact-oriented, guys putting the ball in play. There was another statistic stated on the Fox broadcast after the game. There were 18 two-out hits by the Toronto Blue Jays in the series. 18. If you take out Game 3 for the Yankees, they barely got 18 hits total. And it's an indictment on the creation of this team. So, as I said, there's a lot of blame to go around. This series was an absolute microcosm of the season. You think that this team is going to be able to show up, given the names on the jerseys, the pedigree of the players, and the season that they had in 2025, and they don't. Aaron Judge got the postseason bugaboo off his back this series and was absolutely phenomenal. He did all he could. And yet, up until the home run in game 3, there was still the narrative being spouted by Yankee fans that he hadn't done anything this postseason. The man hit 500 in the postseason. Aaron Judge was not the problem here. The Yankees starting pitching that they paid a lot of money to, a record $218 million to the lefty and Max Fried, $162 million to Carlos Rodon, and neither one of them were able to make it through, let alone get to the 5th inning, but through the 7th, as we saw Cam Schlittler pitching into. No doubt about it, they have to be better. And I don't doubt at all that both of them will be better. I think that both Fried and Rodon are going to really focus in on the fact that they were hit around by the Blue Jays, and they're going to be better in 2026. You also now have the beauty and the benefit of having seen what Cam Schlittler was able to do in this short spurt in 2025 and have very high hopes for him in 2026. You have the impending belief in return of Garrett Cole that you believe will come back to form. And we know that Clark Schmidt will be on the horizon. The Yankees have a making for a very strong, potentially strong starting rotation in 2026. But looking at what happened to this team in 2025, there was a lot to be desired in terms of depth for this organization. And yes, a lot of it was traded away in the last few years, trying to make moves and deals, and ultimately they didn't pan out. Because the one thing with this organization is they will paint you a very pretty song and dance. They will absolutely pull you by the heartstrings year in and year out, making you believe that they are doing what they can to win a championship. And that the focus, and this is the biggest part of where they're trying to pull the wool over our eyes as Yankee fans, is that the focus is winning a championship. But what these last 8 years under manager Aaron Boone have shown me, and this is very annoying and difficult to have to admit, the World Series is no longer the focus for this organization. The only ones that believe in World Series or bust is the fans. Those of us that grew up in my timeline, watching 5 championships and 4 and 5 years from the dynasty Yankees of the late 90s, captained without the title at the time by Derek Jeter. The absolute majesty of what was the Fabulous Five, because they always want to leave out Bernie, but he was the first. Of Bernie Williams, Derek Jeter, Mariano Rivera, Jorge Posada, and Mariano Rivera. Long gone are the times where it was believed within the walls of that clubhouse and flowing out onto the field that it was championship or bust. I wish that I could believe that this organization is going to look at this team and the fact that the last several years they've had the other teams celebrating on their field, and that would drive them, that would push them to be better, to find a way to be better, to find a way, sadly, to put it this way, to be like their opponents that beat them. The Dodgers were able to put the ball in play in 2024, and that's what made them successful. Here we saw it once again. The Blue Jays put the ball in play and were able to be successful over the New York Yankees. We know, and for any of fans that watch a lot of MLB Central, anytime Bill Ripken is on, he has this segment where he looks at the box score, and it's mostly tied into errors. And the team typically that has fewer errors wins the ball game. And when you look at what happened to the New York Yankees in this 2025 campaign, errors played a big part of where they were. Not being able to put the ball in play as their opponent had was another big factor. Think about just facing the Blue Jays by themselves. If nothing else changed, the 4-game set that the Yankees had against the Blue Jays in Toronto in July, one of those games could have made the biggest difference. Now, yes, it could have gone the exact same way had the Yankees started in the Bronx against the Blue Jays, as opposed to starting at Rogers Center in Toronto. Could have gone the same way, because the Blue Jays had shown themselves to be a superior team based on the way they played. But I'm hard-pressed to believe that the Yankees would have played as poorly as they had in Toronto if they had started in the Bronx. I also want to make a quick note here. And there was a narrative going around online with just how badly the Blue Jays were just bludgeoning the Yankees, that the Blue Jays were up to something nefarious. I want to make this very clear. There is going to be a much more difficult time trying to prove anything of the sort. I don't believe that the Blue Jays were doing anything nefarious when it came to how bad they beat up the Yankees in Toronto and how much better at home they played. Because when you watch this team, even on the road, yes, Game 3 was an aberration for them. Game 4 was much more aligned with exactly what they did to the Yankees in Games 1 and 2. And that was on the road, right? So I don't think that the Blue Jays were doing anything, any kind of cheating. I don't think that we're going to find out years from now that there was some sort of cheating scandal with the Blue Jays. Because watching what they did, putting the ball in play, not striking out, being able to go through the mentality of pass the baton, and the fact that Vladimir Guerrero Jr. was just on another level in this series. So I just wanted to make that note because there was a lot of that narrative going around out there. And as a baseball fan and a Yankee fan, I don't want us to be tied into being the boy that cried wolf, because I don't think that that's what happened. I think the Yankees faced the buzzsaw of a team that just put the ball in play and didn't strike out. When the Yankees, and I said it earlier and I'll say it here again, when the Yankees played Game 3 the way the Blue Jays play Games 1, 2, and 4, they won. Putting the ball in play and not striking out, forcing the other team to have to make a play, you saw when it worked out. You forced the Blue Jays in Game 3 to make errors. And in those errors, you scored runs. Obviously, most notably, Addison Barger's drop foul ball put the Yankees in a position where Aaron Judge came up to be able to hit the 3-run home run that obviously got everybody off his back about his postseason, even though he was having a tremendous postseason. So let's just get that out of the way. I don't think it happened, and I don't think that there's going to be some sort of scandal that comes out about them after the fact. Period, point blank. But I don't want this to be a completely just ragging on the one series, because there was a lot this year that could have and should have gone differently for this team. Obviously, losing your ace in spring training in Garrett Cole made things kind of thrown into haywire, into chaos right at the beginning. But I think the Yankees were able, because of the injury. Sometimes, they say that, how does the saying go, where necessity is the mother of all invention, right? So that's exactly what the Yankees had to do this year in finding the brilliance and beauty of what they had with Cam Schlittler. Would not have happened if it had not been for Garrett Cole's injury, if it had not been for the absolute inefficiency of Marcus Stroman for much of the season and being on the IL. There's no doubt about it that every year feels different. Every year there's a different air to each team. And for the Yankees in 2025, the air was much of the same. We got another MVP level historic type season from Aaron Judge, which is what you expect now year in, year out. It's crazy to me that we've gotten to a point with Aaron Judge where we expect greatness. Another 50 plus home run campaign from Aaron Judge. And realistically, this was a guy who missed 10 games and still put up 53 home runs. And even when he came back off the IL from his elbow issue, didn't look exactly right. So imagine if he hadn't gotten hurt. Absolutely incredible. Only the fourth player ever to have 450 plus home run seasons. The other two are absolutely mired in controversy and tied to PEDs, and Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa. And the other was Babe Ruth. Aaron Judge has put himself in the conversation of potentially becoming one of the greatest, if not the greatest players of all time, especially in a Yankee uniform. Now, yes, there's still a long way to go to be able to replace what is arguably the Mount Rushmore of the Yankees with Ruth, Gehrig, DiMaggio, and Mantle. But in that second set, that second monument that would have to be erected for the Yankee greats, that has Yogi and Derek and Mariano, and Judges put his name in that second batch, at least for me. One of the other things that I wanted to really focus on here is what made this team so flawed was its construction. For a long time on this channel, I have been a defender of Brian Cashman, and a lot of the time that has come based on conversation with fans of other teams and how other teams find themselves year in and year out not facing the same expectation. Think about the fact of our arch rival in the Boston Red Sox. For as many championship seasons as they've had in the last 20 years, they've also had last place finishes in the AL East. Think about how up until a couple of seasons back, the Baltimore Orioles were scraping the bottom of the division. The Blue Jays last year were in 5th place in the division and under 500. The Yankees have put themselves in a position where finishing above 500 has seemingly constituted to a winning season simply because fans continue to show up and shell out money for this team. And obviously, again, and I said it before, I'll say it again, fans of my generation, the mentality is still championship or bust. I've played on this channel before and probably will again at some point, the conversation with George Steinbrenner about winning, and that the most important thing to the boss was winning, breathing first and then winning. And winning was not just constituting having an above 500 record. Leading into doing this video and this eulogy for the 2025 New York Yankees season, I went back and watched several of these same post-mortem videos from the last several years. And in 2023, when the Yankees finished over 500 but missed the postseason, that was the narrative being spouted then, that finishing above 500 and having the second longest run of over 500 finishes at 30 something at that point was constituting a moral victory for the team and for the organization. As fans, we're not in it for the moral victories. We want to lift championships. We want to spout about championship victories. And in my lifetime, I've had the pleasure and the honor and the privilege of watching 5 New York Yankee championships. And those are the ones that I boast about. Yes, you will have Yankee fans that will argue about the 27 championships. To me, I don't argue those. I didn't see them. It was a very different league back then in terms of a lot of issues, segregation, not as many teams. Now, with the postseason expansion, there's a lot more to be desired and a lot more difficult of a path to get to winning a championship. So I mostly will argue the 5 in my lifetime. But you could stretch it back to even to the 70s if you want to go that route and go 7. But when you look at the last 25 years, that includes 2000 and now to 2025, the Yankees have 2 championships. In that time, the San Francisco Giants have 3, the Boston Red Sox have 4. You have the Astros that have 2. I mean, even the White Sox have a championship in the last 25 years. A team that has been set the record for the worst win-loss record in the modern era a couple of seasons ago. The Washington Nationals have a championship in that timeline. When you look at what this organization is now spouting as a winning season, it's not the same. It's not the same as it was when the boss was alive. And yes, obviously, we are going to compare Hal Steinbrenner to his father until the day that he dies or sells the team. And it is on Hal to make the final call. But it is also on Hal on who he designated as the architect of this team. And that architect, who I've defended for a very long time on this channel, but I can no longer defend. Brian Cashman has been arguably one of the greatest general managers and president of baseball operations in the past 25 years plus. Amongst his peers in the industry, he is viewed as an absolute genius because of the fact of putting on a winning, quote unquote, product, not having a losing season in his tenure as general manager. But having an above 500 record does not constitute a winning season. And yes, there can only be one winner of the World Series each and every year. I get that. Cool. No problem. But the fact is, Brian Cashman has one title, one championship in his tenure, in my opinion. The 2000 team, the 1999 team, the 1998 team were the remnants of those that had come before him. Gene Stick Michael, Bob Watson. Those were the teams that they put together, and Cashman just had to augment and add pieces to it. 2009 was the first and, in my opinion, only championship that was built by Brian Cashman's hands, and more so by the Steinbrenner wallet in signing the absolute legend and Hall of Famer CC Sabathia, the clubhouse presences that were AJ Burnett, bringing in Nick Swisher, signing Mark Teixeira for his power and poise inside of that lineup, and what he was able to do defensively to help an already Hall of Fame legendary infield in Teixeira, Cano, Jeter, and A-Rod. That was the only team, in my opinion, that Brian Cashman can claim the championship for. But realistically, when you think about it, it just went back to an old Steinbrenner model of outspend everybody. In these last several years, since the wild cards were instituted and the newer format has been put into place, the league is much different. There's a lot more parity in terms of what is available to each and every team. Now, yes, you have your small market teams that are just going to have their owners pocket the extra cash instead of putting a winning product on the field. But I look to a team like the Milwaukee Brewers, who don't have a very large payroll. Yet, year in and year out, Milwaukee seems to be in a position where they quietly are doing all the winning things that you would think about from a winning organization. Yes, they have not won a championship. Cool, I understand that. And that is the measure, that is the stick to really salute yourself by. But you can see the ground has been laid for a team that potentially could win that title this year. The Toronto Blue Jays have found themselves in a position this year to have put a team together on the field that potentially could win a World Series championship based on the way that they play the game between the lines. The things that are happening inside of that front office for the New York Yankees have to change. There has to be a ton of changes for me this offseason, and it starts with Cashman. It starts with Cashman, it trickles down to Boone, and one of the players that I have fought for and said, give him his time, give him his just due. He's not the guy that we're comparing him to, but he can be his own guy. He can figure out his own way. Well, I am man enough to admit I was wrong. And I was wrong about Anthony Volpe. And while I like the idea of Anthony Volpe and the similarities with Jeter, the Jersey kid, growing up a Yankee fan and wanting to be the shortstop for the New York Yankees, we've gone through now 3 years where he's seemingly gotten worse every year. And while Volpe has had spurts where he's gotten hot, where you think, all right, he's turning the corner. What I saw in this series against the Blue Jays, he was 1 for 18 with 11 strikeouts, something insane like that. This is not a major league caliber shortstop. What this team needs, and I will be doing another video here on the channel as far as a wish list of what the Yankees go and do this offseason in terms of free agents and trades and how the team will shake out in terms of what I'd like to see happen. So that won't be here. So make sure you keep it locked in, hit that subscribe button as always. But the Yankees have to make a change at shortstop because Anthony Volpe has proven in 3 full seasons, we've given him his chance, we've given him his time. He has not been able to take that next step offensively. We've seen such a big regression from him defensively. And yes, I think a lot of it on the defensive side of things for Volpe is between his ears because of what's happening offensively. We saw it happen, time and time again. We've seen it where guys will take what is happening at the plate with them to the defensive side of the game. Instead of being able to separate the two, we've seen it, right? And there's obviously a ton of guys that have played in this game where they were defensive first guys, defense only guys. I think remarkably about Simba, Andrelton Simmons, could not hit to save his life. But that man could field at the shortstop position like no one else. There's a place for him on this team. A player like that. And obviously, Simmons is not the guy. He's out of the league now. But there's a place for a guy who is a defensive guy. And if you have a lineup that's constructed to be able to hit, you can hide one single spot of a poor spot in the lineup. The Yankees had far too many holes in their lineup, and that was exposed. Looking at Game 4 and looking at the box score, the Yankees got 6 hits, and 2 of them came from pinch hitters late in the game. The other four hits came from three players. In the Ryan McMahon home run, which was the only run the Yankees scored throughout most of that game up until the ninth inning, when you got your second run on your second hit from the captain, Aaron Judge. The failure to construct a team capable of putting the ball in play is absolutely ridiculous to me. Think about the opposite side. Think about what we saw with the Blue Jays. Ernie Clement. Tell me, if you're a casual baseball fan, if you ever heard the name Ernie Clement before tonight, before this series. Now, obviously, on this channel, I know very well of Ernie Clement and his hitting ability of being able to put the ball in play. This was not somebody who typically you would look at as a guy who's a Yankee killer, who you would think of. You think about the Vladimir Guerrero Jr.'s. You think about the Rafael Devers. You don't think about Ernie Clement. But it's guys like that that show up big in the postseason that help drive the dagger further into your heart. Ernie Clement in this series hit .643 with 1 home run, 5 RBIs, and an OPS of 1.554. To put that in context, and obviously in far fewer at-bats than Aaron Judge, but Aaron Judge ended up with an OPS of 1.273. And just to put it into context, because Clement was sitting there playing second and third, bouncing in between. So let's put that in comparison to our second baseman in Jazz Chisholm Jr., who I'm going to get to in a moment, who hit 182 for his batting average and had an OPS of 598. Ernie Clement's OPS was 1,000 points better than Jazz Chisholm Jr. Now, if you look at them on the surface level and you just ask the question to a casual baseball fan, who's better, Jazz Chisholm Jr. or Ernie Clement? Hands down, everybody's going to say Jazz. He's the more known, the more well-polished player. 30-30 season, right? So this is not to disparage Jazz, who had a great regular season. But his all-or-nothing approach, which is what is a absolute flaw in the construction of this team, does not show well in the postseason. Think about Aaron Judge this postseason. He was looking to put the ball in play and did so successfully. He was the only one. When you look at the lineup, the only other guy to even have, of the regulars for the Yankees, to have a respectable batting average was Ryan McMahon with a 286 average. Outside of that, all you had was guys hitting under 230. Having this team be constructed the way that it is an absolute flaw. There needs to be a level of accountability, and sadly, Cashman, as the fifth Steinbrenner child, is likely not going anywhere. Because Aaron Boone is the absolute puppet of the front office, he's not going anywhere either. He was asked, and this just shows the arrogance of this organization, he was asked by one of the reporters in the postgame if he was worried about his contract, and he smugly looked at that reporter, smirked, and said he's under contract, so no, he's not worried about it.
Aaron, I'm sorry on it, but it becomes a subject every year. Do you have any reason to think you won't be back managing the team next year?
No, I'm under contract, so no, I don't expect anything. Yeah.
If the boss were alive, he would have fired him on the spot at that press conference. Now, in looking at some of the positives, right? Because I want to end this post-mortem looking at least somewhat positively to the future. There were some good notes to this 2025 season. It didn't end well. There was a very big lull in the middle because the Yankees were running away from the division, and this has been the growing theme for this team the past several years is they have sat there and gone out and played incredibly well until about June. Then they swoon until about the middle of August and start of September, and then pick it back up and head into the playoffs and then get bounced. That's been the pattern. What I will give Brian Cashman credit for this year in particular are some of the things that happened. Now, we already spoke about Cam Schlittler, and his emergence was due to the injury to Garrett Cole, because otherwise we would not have seen Cam Schlittler and not known what we have in him. And for me, Cam is your number 3, number 4 starter at worst next season with Garrett Cole returning. But the acquisitions of Ryan McMahon to play third base, his defensive ability is absolutely incredible. We saw that on display this series with this postseason with the dive over the railing against the Red Sox, the sliding catch in game 4 before that absolutely disastrous 7th inning. Being able to acquire a third baseman of his caliber defensively with the ground ball pitchers that you have, especially with the lefty starters in Max Fried and Carlos Rodon, is absolutely paramount. No doubt about it. Great move there. The other move that I absolutely have loved from the moment I heard this deal was announced was the acquisition of Jose Caballero. Caballero is a pesky player. He is a nuisance to teams, and I love it now that he's on the Yankees. Obviously, this was a player that you know, the narrative goes around. You hate him when he's on the other side, and you love him when he's in your clubhouse, and there's no doubt about it. 100%. That is without a doubt what you want. And I also love the acquisitions of Camilo Doval and David Bednar, and the fact that they're here not just in 2025. The likely impending departures of Devin Williams and Luke Weaver were going to facilitate some sort of need in the bullpen. Cashman addressed that even prior. I also think the acquisition of Jake Bird, and I know that he didn't get off to a great start, but I think that a full offseason working with Matt Blake, we can find a very good place and a very good avenue to be able to deploy the services of Jake Bird. So shout out to Brian Cashman for what he did this free agency in 2024 leading into 2025. The acquisitions of Cody Bellinger was enormous. I think the pivot from losing out on Juan Soto and getting a tremendous player in Cody Bellinger, the move that they made to sign Paul Goldschmidt worked out really well to begin the year. Obviously, the emergence of Ben Rice, which is another talking point here for me, offensively, is something that we did not expect. Given the way that we saw him in 2024, there was no way you could expect that was going to be the outcome of what you saw from him this year. But he did a tremendous job offensively, and that was really a big help to this team. And it you know, puts into perspective, and on one of the post-game broadcasts, you know, on Yes, I think it was the Yes post-game, I believe it was Michael K breaking down the indictment of the roster construction.
Just a quick editorial note here. So as I was going through and editing this video, I found the actual clip, and it was actually A-Rod that stated the debacle with the roster construction. So I'll play that clip here.
Honestly, from the entire organization, he's the one guy with Circle that has least to blame. I mean, he's got a lot of talent, but for me personally, one of the worst construction of a roster I've ever seen. You have 3 left-handed catchers, you have 5 DHs, you have a first baseman in and out. It's just a very, very difficult hand for Boone, and honestly, they were exposed against a much better Jays team.
And one of the things that he said, that, and it made me chuckle, was you have 5 DHs on this team. And that's absolutely ridiculous, but it's true. I mean, when you think about the fact that, and Stanton, outside of this postseason, because he did not have a good postseason this year, has carried us through most of the postseason appearances the Yankees have had since he became a New York Yankee. And so you have Stanton, you now have Ben Rice, whose real only position is as a DH. He's not a very good first baseman. He's not a very good catcher, defensively speaking. And you're limited because of Giancarlo Stanton. And obviously, G's not going anywhere. He's been a big proponent for us, as I said, in past postseasons. 2024, he basically carried us through everything. So, no doubt about it, I think that the Yankees roster construction is really going to be under a microscope this offseason. And like I said, I'm going to be doing my wish list in which I will break down all the different desires and wants that I have for this team. But obviously, looking at this year, there's a lot of flaws on this team that have to be addressed. There's a lot of things on this roster and the way that it's constructed, the way that it's managed, the way that it's game planned that need to be addressed. But, and I want to end with this. The biggest indictment on this team, beyond its construction, beyond its management, beyond the failures of the players on the field, is we are wasting the prime of one of the most generational players we will likely ever see. The things that we are watching from Aaron Judge don't happen on a year in and year out basis. And fans of my ilk and my age range, we lived through the PED era, where things that should not have happened seemingly regularly. So we've almost gotten numb to it. And now we're seeing a player who is a generational type talent, a player that is doing things where he is being named with some of the greatest players that have ever stepped on a baseball field, being named with the likes of Ruth and Bonds prior to even his PED's, involvement for Barry Bonds. Because, and that's another story for another time, but I'm just going to add this in here. Barry Bonds deserves to be a Hall of Famer because even if you discount everything from San Francisco, no doubt about it, first ballot Hall of Famer. But I digress. When you look at what we're seeing from Aaron Judge, you are wasting his prime years. And this could potentially be another player that never ends up winning a championship. And that would be absolutely the biggest indictment on this team and its general manager and its owner, is if we do not see Aaron Judge lifting a World Series trophy. We cannot continue to waste the prime years of Aaron Judge, because at some point that prime is going to run out. At some point, Father Time hits us all, and it's going to hit the other side of it. And while we got him on a $369 million 9-year deal, $360 million 9-year deal, that $40 million is going to start to weigh very heavy at some point. And I pray that it's not for a very, very long time, but it's coming. And to continue to waste years in which a player is doing things in which he is named in the company of the greats like Babe Ruth, Joe DiMaggio, Mickey Mantle. He passed Yogi Berra, a guy who's got 10 championships under his belt. We have to start capitalizing as an organization on the greatness that we are witnessing in Aaron Judge. We cannot continue to let his prime pass us by without winning a championship with him. We can't do it. Far too many greats have gone without a championship that deserved one. And we cannot have Judge be another one. So I know this was a lot. I know that, as I said, this has almost become a therapy episode for me, seemingly every single year. And going back and rewatching some of the other post-mortem videos that I've done in the tenure of Aaron Boone as manager in the last several years, I felt like I was saying the same thing over and over and over, and yet nothing ever changed. So I hope and I pray that this time there will be something different that happens with this team. As I said, I will be putting together my off-season wish list video, and that will have a more in-depth breakdown of the moves and things that I believe need to be made by this organization to get back to their championship ways of yesteryear. And this was helpful in releasing the frustration and the anger, but at the same time feeling like I'm restating the obvious and saying the same things over and over again just continue to add to the frustration of being a Yankee fan these last several years. So like I said, a lot has to change, but hopefully we can start making the inroads to be able to make that happen. So again, thank you for watching. Thank you for being a part of this therapy episode for me. Keep it locked in here to the Baseball Banter Broadcast by hitting that subscribe button down below. It does a huge service for us. It's a free thing you can do just to show that you're supporting the channel. We do genuinely appreciate it, as we have a lot more content coming from the channel this year. So make sure you keep it locked in as we continue to keep you up to date with postseason coverage, as well as some things coming up in the off season. So make sure you keep it locked in, and I will catch you guys on the next video. Peace.